Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions. This is a monthly tarot reading for Capricorn. Capricorn for February. And this is a general reading using my adaptation of a Celtic cross. And if you are a regular subscriber to the channel, you will have noticed that I haven't been as active this month. And that's because my daughter was just born on January 23rd. So I may just do the monthly reading for a little while until things settle down. You may be able to hear her right now. Somebody's hungry. Okay, so starting off for Capricorn. Okay, lots of wands here. Lots of wands. Okay, so your current situation is the, let's see, is that the, okay, that's the Page of Wands. And it's in the reverse. So the Page of Wands is, pages represent the sort of childlike energy, in the beginning of the mastery of whatever element they work with. And in the case of the wands, it's action, passion, and, willpower, that kind of thing. So you're kind of starting off with figuring out how to go down that road of action, of acting well, of getting things done. There's a little resistance to this, though. You're kind of, I think, wanting things to happen a little bit passively around you, and not really putting in the work that's necessary to accomplish things. So it's kind of looking at the external situation instead of like looking at how everything emanates from you, how everything that happens has to at some point be caused by you. And so crossing you here is the Seven of Coins, and this kind of indicates, Seven of Coins typically in the upright would indicate, you've put in some work, you've planted some seeds, and you're sitting there watching your crop grow. And it's not necessarily harvest time yet, but it's time is current. It's quickly approaching that it'll be time for you to harvest, and so you're kind of looking at it. But in the reverse here, it's like it's not coming through. Nothing's growing. You're not seeing any sort of fruits that are popping up. And again, the idea here is that you've got to plant those seeds. You've got to work the soil. You've got to put maintenance into nurturing and developing these things, or nothing really happens. You can't depend on the external circumstance to just to take off without you. You've got to put some sort of work in. And this can also mean, delays or feeling like you're not as far along as you should be at this point. And that comes from, again, possibly being distracted from just putting in time to cultivate something. And so you're moving away from this Queen of Cups right here. And the Queen of Cups is level-headed. She's able to control her emotions. And you're moving away from that a little bit. So you're moving into a place of a little more heavy emotions that kind of overwhelm you, or that you're not able to control quite as much. And so, typically that happens if you're rejecting some aspect of your life where it kind of, or people who are non-confrontational, for example. It's like you're putting up a dam behind those emotions, and the dam gets more and more full and until it finally spills over, and then there's more of an emotional outburst. So anytime you're moving away from that sort of emotional stability, it indicates that you're blocking out some particular aspect of your life. You're, maybe taking too much crap, or just not speaking your mind enough, or not looking out for your own interests. And your emotions are there to be a sort of natural check and balance on that process. That's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that your emotions are there, is to prevent you from ending up in a situation where you're too taken advantage of. And so we're all sort of naturally moving toward this more liberated mindset, whether we like it or not, you know. But what you're moving toward is this Eight of Swords, and this represents, you know, feeling a little bit trapped by your own thoughts. So what it means is that you may think that there's no way around this situation. You may think that the situation is kind of how it has to be for right now, and there's not a lot of wiggle room for you. But a big part of that is just your attitude. There is some alternate path available to you. There is something that could be a little bit different, that could make this situation work out better, but you're not really pursuing it because you kind of feel like what you're doing is like the only way. So be careful with that. Be careful about, you know, feeling like you're too chained to a particular way of the future or a particular outcome, something like that, you know. Have a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of an explorative attitude where you're willing to look at new possible solutions to the situation. All right, so the Foundation, you have the Devil here in the reverse. So the Foundation represents, like, what is this all about? What's the lesson that you're being taught here? And the lesson that you're being taught here is not to be too chained to your desires or your a particular way of thinking, right? So the Devil really represents the sort of thought aspect of reality instead of like the real, you know, physical, what's here, what's in front of you. This represents how you think about it. So instead of just hearing that sound, you know, I start labeling it. I start thinking, oh, that's a knock, and oh, it's knocking on wood, and all these labels start occurring. So that's kind of the difference between the reality itself, what happened, and trying to label and think about it. Think about, like, your mind is like a map, and the ground out, you know, the territory is not the map. So you can't build a house on the map, or it probably won't be very successful. But you can use that map. You can use the representation, the symbolic representation of reality to find a good place to build your house. But you have to remember that the map is not the territory, right? So this is the foundation of this whole situation, is not to get too hung up on a particular thought. You know, the Devil controls you with these desires. If you can be coaxed into desiring something, then now you have a hook in you that can be used by others to pull on, to basically make you do what they want you to do. You become sort of a puppet. And in the Devil card, in a lot of decks, the Devil has sort of like a puppet, marionette type of a situation going on where he's controlling these people. And they're always, you know, chained to these desires. So the Devil controls you through that desire, through and sometimes it's really kind of nefarious, because sometimes it doesn't even feel like a desire. It doesn't feel like you're like, oh, I gotta have that. It may feel like something positive. It may feel like something like, oh, I want to be a good person. And that seems so innocent, right? I want to be a good person. But it can very, very much lead you into this sort of excess, or this, you know, that's a desire. The desire to want to be a good person, that's a desire. So you have to watch out for that, because in wanting to be a good person, now other people have an ability to control you. The Devil has an in where he can control you. So you have to be able to sort of like turn the switch off and get rid of those desires, and to figure out, you know, how to act sort of spontaneously without being driven by all of these ambitions or wants, so to speak. Because if you're always acting according to desires or wants or something like that, it has a tendency to come off in a very uneven way, and a very ineffectual way, really. And in the process, you become a tool for some other person. You become somebody who is no longer looking out for your own interests, but you're simply just a pawn in somebody else's game. So you're learning how to not do that. How do you, instead of using your abilities, your talents, your finances, your funds, all that stuff, instead of using it in such a way that's very short-sighted or very based on desire, how do you invest in a more effective way? How do you get your money working for you? You know, how do you sort of turn the tables and use that desire for yourself instead of being trapped by it? Now, the crowning thoughts, this represents what's on your mind. And what's on your mind is this resistance to a difficult transition. There is, the way that Six of Swords works, it's always a positive thing in the long run. It's something that you have to go through, or if you don't have to, it would be very beneficial for you to go through that difficult transition. But you're resistant to it. You don't want to go through that transition. It may be that you're tired. It may be that you've become comfortable with the situation that you're in. Or whatever it is, you're just not feeling like you want to make a change. You're not feeling like you want to go through that. And so, there may be good reasons for it, but it just always bears reminding that there's usually a good reason. If you're presented with a sort of crossroads, there's usually a good reason for it. Your higher power, God, the universe, however you think about it, is attempting to reach you, to teach you a lesson, to have you experience some level of growth to the next stage in life. But you're being a little resistant to it, so you need to watch out for that and figure out a way. If you don't have the energy to go through it right now, well, that's fine. But at least be working toward having the energy to go through it. You see what I'm saying? You don't want to be eternally putting something off. You want to, if you're not able to do it now, you need to at least put in the work to get to the point where you are ready to do it. Okay, so advice is this Nine of Wands here. Nine of Wands has a little bit of a damaged energy. So this, you've been through something, and you know how hard it was, and you're a little bit afraid to go through that again. But it's also an opportunity for you to rise above that and to keep moving forward. Because what you have to realize is that along with the hardships, along with the things that happened that you may have felt broke you down or were not looking out for you in a positive way, you got strength from that too. There's a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So there's something that you've been enriched by those circumstances. Even if the bad thing happens, even if it doesn't work out the way that you want to, even if you take a risk and it doesn't work out well, there's still some positive aspect of these situations that you've been through that you're carrying forward that will help you out in the long run. So maybe you get fired from your job or something like that. Well, that may be awful, but at the same time, how long have you worked there? Now you have something else to put on your resume, right? And, there's certain laws about what your previous employer can say about you and whatnot. So it may work out quite a bit more positive than you think it would. And now your environment is the Eight of Wands. This card, at first glance, if you're new to the deck, it could be a little bit like, what's going on here? It looks like there's just some staffs that are sort of like rushing toward the ground. And that actually portrays the meaning very well, because this is about, something spontaneously occurring. This is like something's really going on, and you don't even really know what yet, but you feel this change. You feel this new development. And it occurs, and you have to just sort of roll with it. So this is in the environment for you. So there's a lot of things that are shaken up. There's a lot of things that are completely just turned upside down. There's a lot of action. There's a tendency of not knowing which way it's coming from. So this can have you feeling really exhausted if you're not careful, because you can be really anticipating and putting a lot of focus and energy into trying to figure out what's going on next. But the best way to deal with this energy really is not to try, but just to, instead of trying to be proactive and figuring out what's going to happen next, you kind of play whack-a-mole a little bit, where you wait for things to pop up and you solve them when necessary. And shifting to that type of a mindset a little bit. And maybe you're in a situation where you can't completely follow that path, but shifting to that mindset a little bit, inviting a little bit of that energy into your life, may kind of free up a little bit of emotional energy for you, to where you feel a little bit more able to tackle things in your life instead of feeling like it's all too much. Now, your fears card is the Two of Cups in the reverse. So, the Two of Cups is typically a really harmonious relationship. This is a balanced, good relationship. It's not just unfettered desire or things like that, where you're infatuated or anything like that. It's really more of having a good synergistic balance. It's you bring something good to the table and they bring something good to the table. And, you're afraid of upsetting that balance. You're afraid of, there may be, and it's not just relationships that this applies to. It can apply to you as a person, aspects within yourself, or even just sort of a balance in your environment where things feel pretty stable. It may not be pleasant, but at least it's somewhat predictable and stable and doable, right? You've been doing this for a while. You can keep doing this. So you're afraid of kind of upsetting that balance. You're afraid of messing things up, because that throws you into a state of like real anxiety, because now you have no idea what's about to occur. And it seems like you're already feeling a little bit of a chaotic environment as it is. So you're doing your best to hang on to whatever semblance of normalcy you have, instead of stirring the pot, so to speak. But what's going to happen, your overall message here, the overall outcome is this 10 of Wands. And the 10 of Wands represents being over encumbered. This is the final card in the Wands, in the action. And you've got the 8, 9, and the 10, and then the Page for your current situation. So you've got, you're right on that edge. But, here's where you are, and here's where you're trying to end up at the Page. You're finally getting into the point of mastering that action, but you're just teetering on the edge. You're not quite there yet. This is the lesson that you're really going to have to learn first. And with the 10, or with each of the different energies in the deck, the swords, the coins, the wands, and things like that, the 10 kind of represents that signal of completion, where you're kind of understanding how the element works, and then you go into the court cards where they apply that understanding, and various levels of mastery, right? But in the 10 of Wands, this completion of understanding how action works is not a very positive one, as it is in like the 10 of Coins or the 10 of Cups, where everything's kind of happily ever after, right? In this case, there's an over-encumbered energy, and that represents that there is no end to the number of things that you can do or that you might have to do. There's no end to the work that you can put in. So at some point, you've got to step back from this attitude of, okay, I got to do more, I got to do more, I got to do more, and you have to pick and choose your battles. And if you don't, you're going to run out of energy. You're going to be over-encumbered. Each one of us is aging. We're getting older, and as you get older, you start to run out of energy. And if you don't pick and choose and select how you're going to apply that energy, things are not going to get any easier. They're just going to get harder and harder, and you're going to be trying to juggle too many things, and those failures are going to kind of set you back. So you want to be able, it's more important to be very successful at whatever you're doing instead of trying to accomplish a lot of things. So go for quality, not quantity here. So, that's a very important lesson for you here. So you may be carrying forward this balance where you're being a little over encumbered and you're just putting up with it, you're allowing it, but eventually, time is going to kind of run out for that, and you're going to feel as though it's all too much, and you can end up having a sort of mental breakdown in that kind of a situation. So you got to find a way to step back and make the situation work out in your benefit a little bit more, instead of working for these other people, because what's happening is you're just really piling things on, and it's going to get harder and harder the more you go down this road. So it's time for you to figure out a way to make your action, not to get rid of action, not to just throw all these sticks away, which again, the wands represent action, but not to get rid of it, but to instead find a way of maturing and figuring out a way to be more efficient and having your action work out in your benefit instead of creating this perpetual loop where you're trapped and subservient to others. So that's the idea for you, is that you've got to mature this energy, because it won't get any better until you start taking that difficult transition into getting a little more mastery of how your actions are going to be applied. So pretty cool message for you there. So that's about it for February. Check back in next month unless I get around to doing some more readings, but I kind of feel like I need a little bit of a break myself. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys again next time.